So, got lots of questions.
Okay.
Lots of some very good ones, some very cringe ones. So, let's get started. And I'll start off with the most recent, and I'll work backward.
Mm-hmm.
Once this thing loads. Here we go. The reaction by Korean fans to Chen's wedding and baby is interesting. Seeing the disappointment and reaching for excuses like it's non-feminist to not use protection and other stupid shit like that. Do you think there will be a shift in attitude going forward, or will idols dating and getting married forever be a scandal?
Well, I think that kind of links back to something we've talked about previously in terms of people in fandom weaponizing social justice issues. So it's just another common incident of that, I guess. In terms of answering the actual question, I think there's always going to be a certain stigma, unfortunately, around dating, especially within the K fandom, because it's always been such an essential part of the idol career and image. Personally, I've never been a fan of that, and that's why it doesn't bother me when people who are my faves date. So, like, for me, I've always had Chen as my favourite member of EXO because he's a fantastic vocalist.
Yep.
That is 100% the reason that I am his stan, and he's quite handsome, and I think he's been funny, and, like, a little bit of a schoolgirl crush kind of thing, but never actually, like, a deluded sense of I'm going to end up with him in the end.
Yeah.
So, like, for me, him getting married, him having a baby, doesn't take anything away from what I enjoy about him. And if anything, it just makes me happy for his success. Although, unfortunately, he has said some things in the past that count as he did the ducks. He made a joke about looking like the character from Roots when he wore a dark lipstick, so that kind of made me go a bit in terms of standing. But again, racism and K-pop, I think you're going to have a hard time finding someone who hasn't said problematic shit in their past. So, in terms of, if you can hear my dogs in the background, they're idiots.
Mm.
But so...
Was that a racist bark?
It's a racist dog whistle.
That's right.
So dating never bothered me, but I'm not a K fan. I'm not the person who's buying 100 albums for the chance to hold up his hand and tell him how much I love him, and then he's going to hold my hand and tell me not to go to the next person in his group because he loves me so much. And I feel like unless that aspect of the culture changes, it's going to be so difficult for K fans to pull their head out of their ass. And the companies are super reluctant to ever change anything about it because these fans that bulk buy hundreds of albums to get into the fan sites are their major source of income. So,
they're certainly doing well with the status quo as it is. It's certainly at the higher levels anyway. So I agree. They're not going to really change anything. I don't think anything's really going to change. I mean, my objective when writing about these things has never been to try and change a system because I really don't think I can do that. It's more just
to have a space that actively critiques it for other people who exist in the fandom that are capable of appreciating the content but don't want to have to exist in the same space as the mass consumers.
Yeah, basically. So exactly that, just to have a place where, people can go, okay, I can be a fan and, not buy into all the crap.
Mm-hmm.
And because I know that when I first became a fan of it, it was really hard to find people who I could really talk to about any of the stuff because everyone was just taking it to that next level and it's just really alienating. And so it's just really hard to even have a conversation.
Yeah, like I found out about your writing from the anti-K-pop fangirl blog that used to exist, and then I became a fan of that through, like, I saw your posts a few times, thought they were funny. I think it was very much a bit of an Australian humour that I saw in those, and then obviously followed Asian Junkie for a while, and then just through that was able to find, I guess, the niche that exists in our little space.
Yep. Cool. But that's all I've really got to say on that. It's nothing's going to change.
No.
And what was this
in an ideal world it would, but just I don't think that we've got the market power to be able to enforce a change in a business which is unfortunately driven by results, and the people who are the obsessed ones that spend all that money are the ones who are driving the industry.
Let's move on to the next response. What have we got? This one's entirely directed towards you.
Okay.
AustralianSana, what channels or sites can I use to watch Japanese wrestling in Australia?
I
was watching a Kamen Rider movie recently. I don't know what the fuck that means. And Tanahashi played one of the mini boss characters.
Oh
so
my
I
God.
want to see his usual stuff.
Oh, that's funny because Tanahashi is like a massive face, and for those who understand wrestling, that means it's like the super good guys who like are never in the villainous roles.
Right.
So the way that I've watched New Japan since my friend got me into it is just through their official website. So it is a subscription and it is a paid subscription. So unfortunately I can't recommend anything to you that is cheap in that sense of free. But I think for a lot of people who are fans of it, they find the subscription price pretty good. And then there's probably sites that do exist that have those kind of things available, but I just don't know them as such. But I'm sure if you can find them on Google or something, if you try hard enough forums.
Yep.
Yeah, in terms of Tanahashi, yeah, like I'm probably saying his name in like a super stupid Australian accent, like Tanahashi, when it's like Tanahashi in Japanese. But yeah, my friend got me into it. Super glad that they did because I highly have enjoyed all the content since. He's also in a movie called My Dad is a Heel Wrestler. Highly recommend that movie too. So if you've got the chance to watch that and you're kind of getting into a few things, that's another one of my recommendations.
Cool. I'll take your word for that. No, it's something I know nothing about, but all good. We'll move on. I think there's another wrestling question later or something like that.
Yay! I'm glad people are like asking me a couple of other questions that might not necessarily relate to K-pop, even though might not be your forte. But it's just nice for me to have a few things that aren't going to like get me jumped for having opinions.
Yeah. Are wrestling fans as crazy as K-pop fans? Is there a safe saying?
But in their own way, I think they're crazy, but like a lot of them still have common sense. So, for example, when WWE has had its performances in Saudi Arabia, the wrestling fandom has had quite a strong backlash against that. So I'm like, oh, yay, my meatheads with like common sense. I like you people.
Do they still think wrestling is real?
Depends on who you ask. If Chris Jericho's in the ring, it's real to me.
Next one. Do you think the Australian arsonists are lighting the fires in the hopes of making the Mad Max setting a reality?
Well, I guess if you're going to get political, I think the major thing you might want to suggest is that the fires being lit by arson are a smaller percent. Like, it's very much like if you're going by percentages, it's the same amount that is usually every year. So you'll get a few people who are arsonists, and yes, obviously you condemn that behaviour. But in terms of the freak fires that are going on right now in Australia, and there was a chart that was done, it like listed all the major fires with like the most amount of hectares burned. Pretty much all of them except one were lightning strikes. So it is very much an unfortunate climate change issue, and we've got a government that is completely inept on dealing with climate change. Thanks, Rupert Murdoch.
One of the most interesting things I thought about the whole fire situation is hearing conservative people suddenly say, oh, we need to do more burn-offs like the Aboriginals did, and advocating Aboriginal-style land management. I think that's interesting.
Like, gee, I wonder why the Aboriginals aren't in charge of land management as it is. Let's think about it. But yeah, mess everywhere.
Yes. How I know that you're how close did, without wanting to reveal your exact location for all those doxers out there, how close were you to the fires?
I've got the app that's called Fires Near Me, and I set it to an 18-kilometre watch radius, and I get notifications every day. There's a couple of the major fires have been within that watch radius, not the Gospers Mountain or the other really huge ones that I've seen on TV. But yeah, there's a few within my radius. I had one that came up in my notification yesterday, and it was literally a street away from one of my really good friends. So I was just like sending them that message like, you okay? So yeah, the fires do exist in terms of like there's something to be concerned about, but I also feel privileged in the sense that there's enough road breaks, that it won't likely affect where I live, but at the same time, things like lightning strikes, things like the way that ash can travel 30 kilometres, those flares can travel 30 kilometres, and there's fires 18 kilometres in my watch zone, so you're never 100% safe. For any people who are listening out there, make sure to have a fire plan and like know when to leave and all that kind of fire education-y stuff. So like I feel like there's definite privilege in terms of how I'm able to cope with it, but it's definitely something to be concerned about. And me and my history of, as I think I've talked to you about before, spontaneous lung collapses, my lungs are not in the best shape, so that's so concerning when the smoke is an issue. So yeah, that's been more of the factor for me rather than the fires itself. The smoke has been pretty shit for my lungs. Not fun.
The fires, where I live in Adelaide, I live quite sort of inner city urban, so I'm pretty much safe here. Also, the fires tend to go from west to east, and I've got the coast on the west, so I'm probably one of the few people who doesn't really have to worry. But it's certainly a bit freaky seeing what's going on around the country. And we have had a couple of days where there's been fires on Kangaroo Island, and I've woken up and it's just like smoky and the visibility's really bad.
It's really sad in terms of Kangaroo Island as well, because I'm pretty sure the mayor or whoever, like, the regional leader of that area is a fucking dipshit who, like, literally went on record saying that climate change had nothing to do with the fires, even after 2 firefighters died on that island. Yeah, not good. Again, it's just like we're in a country that's run by idiots.
Yeah, well, and these sort of things don't make them, see reason either. It's just, they just solidify their position in one way or another.
Yeah, there's been all those studies that are done onto people who are like, the more facts you present someone with, the harder they actually will believe their own lies.
Can't change idiots, I suppose.
You can vote them out, so ladies, make sure to enrol next election for wherever you live and vote out Conservatives for the sake of not dying in fires.
Yes, in Australia you have to, as soon as the election is announced, you can't actually enrol, so make sure you get your ass out and do it. As soon as you're eligible to do it.
Public service announcement. Enroll now before it's too late.
Let's move on to the next one. Is CL too poor to afford proper music videos for her new indie songs? If the bums on Mirrorball Music can manage it, what's her excuse?
Well, to be honest, I haven't actually seen the newer music videos if they have come out, but I highly doubt being poor is going to be her problem because she comes from a very affluent family. So, she grew up traveling all over the world. That's how apparently she's like fluent in French. So, along with obviously English and Korean, and I'm pretty sure Japanese is pretty high up in her vocabulary too. So yeah, money, not much of a problem for her. I know that she was like in a commercial with Beyonce for Beyonce's clothing line very recently as well. So she's got the connections and she's got the money, and if anything, I would almost say that a cheap music video would probably have been something that she would have filmed whilst in YG, if I had to take a guess.
Yeah. Hang on, I'm just taking my cat's been really funny because I've been feeding my cat on the streams lately, on the live streams I do. So my cat's kind of worked out the fact that if I'm talking to my computer, it means she might get food.
Good cat!
So she's kind of sat herself down right in front of the computer.
Cats. I've always wanted a cat. My parents are dog people, which I respect because I do love my dogs, but always wanted a cat. Love cats.
Yeah. So yeah, she's listening.
Hi, cat!
Yeah, with Sia, what I think it is with those new songs, she was like 6 new songs she put out. It's interesting, they've all got dates on them, right?
Yeah.
And all those dates in the past, by 6 months to a few years. So I think she's clearing house of a lot of the YG stuff that she worked on at that time. And I think she's just put in like, just quick, hey friend, why don't you make a video for me with with some photos or something, just real cheap stuff just to just to clear house before she works on something brand new. I think that's the plan.
I'd say so.
Yeah, so, and that's why there's, there hasn't been much fuss about them apart from the videos. She's getting it out there. And I think the next thing we see from CL will probably be something a bit more along the lines of what we're used to. But not so YG directed.
Yeah.
For better or worse. All right, next one. This comes with a link which I'll send to you. Do you think these theories about ancient astronauts hold any water?
Okay.
And hang on, I'm just moving my cat so I can get to the chat bar and paste you this link. And the link's just a Wikipedia entry for ancient astronauts. So just have a quick skim of that.
Alrighty, ancient astronauts it is.
Ancient astronauts, or ancient aliens, refers to the pseudo-scientific idea that intelligent extraterrestrial beings visited Earth and made contact with humans in antiquity and prehistoric times.
Oh, is this like people who think aliens built Stonehenge?
I guess so. Proponents suggest that this contact influenced the development of modern cultures, technologies and religions, and even human biology. A common position is that deities from most, if not all, religions are extraterrestrial in origin, and that advanced technologies brought to Earth by ancient astronauts are interpreted as evidence of divine status by early humans.
Yeah, I see Stonehenge in a picture.
Yeah. The idea is not taken seriously by most academics and has received no credible attention in peer-reviewed studies.
Oh, I think it's fun. Yeah, like, who's to say what has happened in the world over the last few thousand years, if not billions? Of course, science should take priority, but, I mean, let people have their theories as long as it's not harming anyone.
Yeah, I think, people believe whatever they want, really, as long as they're not running around with guns trying to force it down your throat. Who really cares?
Yeah.
We've got some more silly questions here. Dog food lid backwards is a dildo of God. Thoughts?
Wow. You learn something new every day. I had a friend who once told me about, like, if you rearrange the letters of my full name, you can get the words healing love. And I was like, aww. But I'm, like, the complete opposite of that as a person. So it was funny.
Next one. When you're home alone, do you go to the toilet with the door open?
That is weird because I literally had that circumstance this morning when I woke up to use the bathroom and my parents are out of the house and I closed the door behind me and I'm like, why did I close the door if I am by myself in the house? And then, so that answers that question.
Yeah.
Force a habit, really.
Yeah, I guess. I don't even really think about it. I can't even remember what I did last time.
Yeah, I think it was just funnily enough.
And I don't live alone, so that's a scary thing. All right. Next one is accurate or no, and I'm going to send you a link.
Okay. I have to open up the chat bar again.
All right. This is it's Ian Miles Chong. Finally, K-pop cringe is trending.
So I just got an archive link.
Yeah.
Finally, K-pop cringe is trending. Oh, yeah, that edit.
There's, you scroll down, there's some interesting clapbacks on it too.
Yeah, I like the Hosoki Love Bug clapback, and it's basically like, I'd say it's like a more wholesome image, to be honest. And it's there's definitely aspects of K-pop and adult fans in K-pop fandom who deserve to be criticized. But I feel that the image is definitely something that's made up by a troll, and this obviously looks like the kind of thing you'd find on 4chan, so you're never really going to have a rational debate with anyone from there. There's a few things that are obviously wrong with it in terms of correlating weight to character, so you're fat, so therefore you must be bitter or ugly or like mean or stupid and that kind of thing. So, there's obviously a lot of things to deconstruct about that. That's inaccurate. Same deal with skin, because it's like, you know, just because someone has a breakout doesn't mean that they're ugly. So that's why I quite like the reply, which you'll probably be able to like insert as a picture if you've got the blog or you've got the YouTube video that was from the Ho Soppy Love Bug. And it basically just goes through and, you know, the girl's still a bit chubby in the picture, but they acknowledge it, and then it says is fat, but who cares? That doesn't define people's worth as humans, which I wholeheartedly agree with.
I actually really like the next clapback after that. The grown man who has K-pop as his sole enemy.
Quite accurate, especially lives in mother's basement.
But, you know, I mean, all stereotypes have a grain of truth in them. That's how they get started. Yeah. But, you know, so, I mean, the first one, I mean, there are probably people like that who do exist, but there's plenty of people who also exist like the second one too. Yeah. And, you know, so...
Something that I actually had a, you know, finger quotes problem with was a lot of K-pop fans then started, quote, replying to the tweet with selfies being like, see, I'm conventionally attractive, so it doesn't apply to me. It's like, that's just very much hashtag I'm not like other girls kind of thing. It's like, you know, this person is clearly insecure and got problems and is just being mean on the internet for the sake of, you know, being mean in whatever insecurity in life he has. So why are you seeking to validate that criticism? Or, like, why are you trying to appeal to this person? Be like, see, I'm not like that. I'm like, why is this someone you want the approval of?
Well, it's like
slam dunk on them to show that we're not like that. But it's also like, well, you're also reinforcing that to be unconventionally attractive, words, tired, just came back from gym, brain not working. Yeah. But it's like reinforcing the idea that if you're not conventionally attractive, then you are worthless and you are as bad as that comic. It's like, so what? So what if someone does look a little bit like that comic? That doesn't mean they deserve to be ridiculed by 4chan bros.
Yeah, it's buying into the conversation.
Yeah.
With the parameters that are originally set by the image. Mm. So, as opposed to saying, well, that's kind of bullshit. Yeah. Yeah, so... let's move on. Next one. If it takes 1 hour to cook a batch of cookies and Cookie Monster has 15 ovens working 24 hours a day every day for 5 years, how long does it take Cookie Monster to make 6 million batches of cookies?
Damn, quick math.
Yeah, I can't. It's beyond me. That's why I'm a musician, because I can only count to 4, so I'll skip out on this one.
Yeah, I'm sure, like, if I really wanted to, I could probably sit down and answer that question, but right now it would actually take me quite a while, so I'm going to pass.
Yeah, we'll pass on that one.
I'm sure someone can come along with the answer if they really, really want to.
Yeah, we've reached the bottom of the barrel. Here's a fuck, marry, kill question.
Oh, God.
Scott Morrison, Pauline Hanson, Tony Abbott.
I think we've already established the fact that I would rather, like, I'd be very happy to die in these circumstances.
Yeah, I think you could order them anywhere. It wouldn't matter.
It's pretty much like the same thing. They're all like a deviation of the one lizard in a human skin suit.
Next. Why do you think that Americans hate pineapple toppings on pizza?
Because they're smart for once.
Don't like pineapple on pizza.
Ban pineapple on pizza. It's a disgrace.
When I was growing up, there was never this stigma about pineapple on pizza. Everyone used to like it. And then all of a sudden it became cool on the internet to not like pineapple on pizza. And I must have missed the memo because I'm not sure when that happened.
Not soon enough.
So what bothers you about? Do you like pineapple without pizza?
No.
Oh, that's fair enough then. Because I like pineapple in general, so I like it. I like it on most things.
I'm a pretty fussy eater, so like I'm a fucking nightmare to be honest. But I just can't stand pineapple on pizza. Very rarely can handle pineapple in general. I can handle it in small doses. Mm-hmm. Like I might have a little bit of it, but in terms of like being able to eat just straight up pineapple, nah. The way that I can eat other fruits, like for example, love watermelon, enjoy apples, enjoy bananas, enjoy oranges, enjoy quite a lot of fruits, and like can eat whole amounts of the fruit in whole serving sizes, can't do it with pineapple.
Yep.
I also hate coconuts and avocado.
Oh my god. Jeez.
Fuck avocado.
What do you eat?
Did I not just say banana, watermelon, oranges, apples, strawberry? I like strawberries. Strawberries are my favourite.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Noted. How did you act to the strawberry scare a year or two ago where there were the needles?
Like, please, get closer to death as soon as you can. Tell me the fuck up.
Next question. Have you been keeping up with the Onision scandal?
Oh, I just saw that video of him having a mental breakdown and just laughed.
I'll continue on. Chris Hansen from To Catch a Predator has gotten involved by interviewing all of his victims on his YouTube channel, and he's even contacting the FBI. They're apparently in the works of launching an investigation. More victims keep coming forward, and they all have come clean about he and his spouses, he has a spouse, predatory ways of luring young girls to trust him when they're between 14 and 17 years old, and immediately pressuring them into sexual activity once they turn 18.
Ew. Yeah, gross. I mean, it's textbook grooming. Sounds like YG and his wife. Yeah, pretty much. Just that's a nice little summary of it. I remember, like, in his little mental breakdown video, he was like, "You tried to call the FBI and it didn't work." And it's, so you go for the Patreon. So good to know that they're going back to the FBI again.
I didn't even know who Onision was until I saw Blair White talk about Onision, actually. And but I still don't even really know what his claim to fame is.
I just know that he's a YouTuber of some sort, and I'm not sure whether he was a gamer, but I've vaguely heard the name a few times during, like, Twitter stuff and seen his profile through that. And he's always had, like, a reputation of being a creep, and apparently I saw something about, like, one of his exes, and that was when I originally heard about, like, the ex escaping an abusive relationship, so obviously, like, more things have come out since then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Here's an ex-sport question for you.
Sport.
It wasn't wrestling. I know Kpopalypse hates sports. However, I'm curious to know AustralianSana's opinion on the current status of the figure skater of Evgenia Medvedeva.
Evgenia Medvedeva.
Thank you. And Russian figure skating as a whole. Her old training mate Elena Zagatova has just announced she's going on a hiatus. But a lot of people pretty much know this is her camp, and coach pushing her to retire due to her being 17 and not being able to keep up with all of the 15-year-old quad jumpers.
Yep.
I personally think the situation in Russia is quite depressing because they basically treat female figure skaters as disposable as soon as they reach puberty.
Yep. Yeah, so for people who do follow me on the Twitter that is private, a lot of people will know that I'm a very big Evgenia fan. I've admired her for a very long time. I've been following her since, like, pre-Olympics, and yeah, I adore her. I love her very much, and, like, one of those things, like, I just wish I could give her the world. I'm also a fan of the Japanese figure skater Yuzuru Hanyu, and I've been a fan of the sport for a while, so I know Michelle Kwan. I know Sasha Cohen is another one who I really, really like. And I like to figure skate as a hobby, but I'm pretty much mediocre at it, but I still love to go out on the ice and just have some fun. In terms of Evgenia, what I really do love about her is the fact that she's very resilient. And I just have to quickly Google her age, because I think I've been a fan of her since she was like 18, which by Russian standards is like, you know, retire, you hag. Evgenia Medvedeva. Let's see, age. I know she's in her 20s. She has to be, but she's still quite young. She was born in 1999.
Okay,
Yeah, so she's
20.
So no, I would have been a fan of her since, like, she was 16 or so. So, like, I recognized her as, like, a super talented figure skater. And then the Russian system, pretty much exactly like the person in the mention has summed up, is it's like they train them and they drill the shit out of them until they're like robots, but the training is not conducive with long-term sustainability.
Why does this remind me of something else in particular?
So, like, I have a coach who I take lessons from, and I asked her about this one session, and I was just like, you know, how are these Russian athletes jumping quads, because there's a new up-and-coming skater, I think her last name, Trusova, is the last, like, Alexandra Trusova, and, like, I've done a quick few searches of her, and, like, she's basically come onto the scene this year. Like, she's just leveled up to, I think, being 15 and capable of competing in, like, the senior circuit. And I first heard of her when she was 12 to 13, because she was doing quad jumps as a 12-year-old, or, like, nearly a quad jump. And, like, she finally nailed it when she was 13, something along those lines. So for those of you who are listening and have no idea what figure skating is, quad or triple or double refers to the amount of spinning rotation someone does in the air. So to do a quad jump means you take off on the ice and you spin around in a circle, like in the air, 4 times before landing, and you have to stick the landing, and there's certain deductions that the judges will do depending on, like, the way that you land on the blade and whether you stumble, etc. So to do a quad jump as a female is phenomenal, because it basically hasn't been seen in the sport. So Trusova was, like, probably one of the first women to land a quad jump, and she was doing it when she was 12. So that was just like, how? So I chatted to my coach. I'm like, how is she doing this? And it's all to do with the training system that they start them in. And, like, Russian training, it's almost like the equivalent, I guess, of the South Korean education system in their schools, where it's, like, the most intense in the world. And it is absolutely not set up for long-time achievements. Like, they will bust their knees by the time they're 17, and, like, they're going to have lifelong cartilage damage, lifelong ligament damage. So in terms of the Australian skating scene, so whilst I'm far from competitive, the rink that I go to has kids training for the Olympics. It also has, like, an Olympian representative. I've skated a rink that, like, has the Olympic representative from the 2018 games. It's like, how do I say it in a way that's not offensive? Like, I don't mean it in a rude way at all, but they're nowhere near close to competing for gold. But in the way that the system runs in the countries that are competing for gold, you wouldn't want to be, because it would literally be the be-all and end-all of your life.
Yeah,
and
it just fuck you up too much.
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas the kids that I see on the ice when I do my little trainings, like, they've obviously got parents who love them and care about them, and there's things in their future that exist beyond skating. As much as they do love the ice and dedicate their time to the ice, they have futures outside of it, or even futures within the ice that are long-term. So, like, unlike the Russians, skating can have long-term careers. So the person who I take my lessons from, she was training for the Olympics at one point when she was, like, a teenager, but she eventually pulled back from the competitive circuit because she wanted to have more of a life. Like, she wanted to date, she wanted to just do normal teenage things, and she's been very happy with her life since. And I think at one point she was talking about doing Disney on Ice. So Disney on Ice is, like, a huge example of a career in the ice. A lot of Olympic athletes will have exhibition galas, even like during events that are on the competition tours. So it doesn't have to be gold medal or nothing. And in terms of Evgenia specifically, she basically got out of the Russian system right after the last Olympics. So when she competed in the previous Olympics, I think that was 2018, she was the odds-on favourite to win gold, because she was, like, the world number 1. She just won the world championships and she was coming into the Olympics red hot. But she placed second behind the skater who you just mentioned is being forced into retirement, who was another Russian. And that Russian at the time was 2 years younger than her. So she was devastated, because that was what her whole life had been building up to. But the way that the Russian system works, there was a new kid on the block, and the new kid had been doing things that she wasn't trained in when she was in the machine, because it's always about improving on the machine. So the new kid had a few more tricks in her routine. There's points scoring in the way the routines are set up. So if you land a majority of your jumps towards the end, then you get more points, because for some reason that's now seen as more valuable. Routines have taken a big shift from being about the artistry to being heavily scaled on the jumps. And it's always a balance to try and find the right amount between them, because obviously if you scale it too much towards the artistry, it's far too subjective. If you scale it too much towards the jumps, then it ruins the artistic side of the sport, which it still very much is. So it's all about trying to find that balance. And right now it's a lot more skewed in the jump favor. So the other contestant, and it was fair, so it's not rigged, but she gamed her routine so to score maximum points through the jumps at the end. I know Evgenia did have some at the end as well the same way, but it's just she had more, and that's why she won the gold. So after she basically got her heart broken and was made to feel like she was replaced and useless in the Russian system, Evgenia then went to Canada, and that's where she's been training since. She's been training under Brian Orser, who is a very well-known coach in the figure skating world. He also trains Yuzuru Hanyu. And I've just, from following her on Instagram, following her tweets, she just seems like such a happier person for it. And I just I love seeing that. I love seeing someone fight back against such a system that's set up to push you down and make you feel useless. And I love that she's fighting back against that. And just very unfortunately for her, she recently competed in a Russian event, but her boot broke. She had a sad, like a devastating fall during a warm-up. So she competed in the short program, but didn't do too good because of the boot issue. And then the long program was set up and she just felt she had to withdraw because it was too dangerous for her to skate the routine on the broken boot. And yeah, it was very sad. And like, I just feel, devastated for her in the sense that she put all that work into getting out of that system, did everything right, got herself the new coach, got herself to a new country, and she comes back to prove herself to the Russian system, and just the worst thing happened for her. So I'm just like, it's devastating as a fan of her, can feel for her, but, I think she's already proved herself in that system. She's a world champion and no one can ever take that away from her. She deserved her gold, but unfortunately it just didn't come. And that's something I talked to my coach about as well, in terms of the Olympics are only every 4 years. So you could be the best figure skater in the world, but by the time that 2 years comes, like if you're the best figure skater in the world 2 years after the last Olympics, by the time the next 2 years come around again for the Olympics, probably someone else has come up through the machine that's going to be better than you by then. And it's not a fault of her, it's just timing. So yeah, that's my massive rant on figure skating. As you can see, I have passions besides K-pop.
Yes, just like the picture before, it's just that, people do like other things. Amazing. I obviously don't have much to add to that, but it's, but obviously there's a certain parallels you can draw to K-pop.
Absolutely.
Well, next question. What do you think about the claim K-pop fans make whenever K-pop scandals happen about them being orchestrated cover-ups for juicier government scandals? For example,
I'm huge on that conspiracy.
Sorry?
I'm hugely in on that conspiracy.
You're in on that one? You believe that one?
A bit, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think. I know that people have noticed certain patterns.
I think it was a lot more prevalent during the previous administration. And on one hand, like, I'm an adult and I understand that many other adults do not give a shit about K-pop, like in Korea, the same way that no one gives a shit about the Kardashians or Justin Bieber in the West. But likewise, the same kind of thing also happens in the West as well. It's like some shit goes down with, Trump and Iraq or Trump and Iran, or Trump says something and or the country is on fire and Scott Morrison goes, how great is the cricket? It's like, it's such a huge thing that exists, I'm pretty sure, in every country where pop culture is a machine that's used to distract from greater issues. And because it's just such a constant churn of events and constant churn of new thing to read about, new thing to care about, and what did this person do this? It's going to correlate to when something fucks up with the government as well. So how much of it is actually a conspiracy with the government trying to release something deliberately versus how much of it is a bit of a coincidence with what's going on at the same time that the government is also in a scandal as well.
I wonder if it's changed a bit now because of Burning Sun in particular, Because when you think about it, and depending on how much you know, Burning Sun really is a government scandal. There is also a K-pop scandal, and the two are very much linked. And so, obviously, you know...
In a way, I feel like Burning Sun also kind of proves that K-pop is very much the sacrificial lamb for the government, because... You know, if you look at how many names are coming out during Burning Sun, like Sungwoo is obviously the hugest one. Then you had the two guys who ended up going to jail for, I can't remember the names off the top of my head. And then you had like the other people who were named in that group chat that were like named and shamed. But, you know, all these names coming out are idols and actors. But, you know, where's the names of the government figures?
Yes.
But everyone's too busy. Where's Sungwoo? Go to jail. Which, by the way, I absolutely am on board with. Electric chair. But, you know, let's electrocute the government whilst we're at it. Guillotine.
Yeah, I think that's the scandal that they may not have wanted to have more attention to. And more. Anyway, we'll move on to the next. Alright, there's two links here. And the question is, why are your politicians puppets of China?
Everyone's a fucking puppet of China.
Yeah, China kind of run the world at the moment. Have you not noticed? Question asker. Do I even need to link you these things? Probably not, but I will anyway. Here's the first one. Paul Canning on Twitter. I heard ASIO investigating reports of Chinese plot to...
I heard that he was a 32-year-old Melbourne resident cultivated by Chinese government to run as a Liberal candidate in the Commonwealth Parliament, and now he's dead. Yeah, thing is the person who replaced that supposed candidate is, I think her name's Gladys Liu, and she was the candidate who then had those really shitty signs that were saying, this is how you vote in the election, that were designed and in the same colours as the Australian Electoral Commission, but they were actually Liberal Party propaganda signs in Chinese. And that's the person who replaced the guy who was supposedly assassinated for threatening to spill the beans on China trying to get its way into the Australian Parliament. So, pretty obvious that it was a pretty legit thing that, you know, he was going to be a Chinese spy, and then he's obviously since been replaced by another Chinese spy, because Gladys Liu also has ties to the CCP.
Yep.
So, like, it's not even well hidden, so...
Yeah, okay. The second link's really just about the same thing.
Yeah.
So.
Like, yeah, Gladys Liu was the person who replaced that candidate, and she obviously committed fraud in terms of getting herself elected in the first place, and then the Australian Electoral Commission just rules that as not actually being against the rules. I'm like, oh, it's not deception, it's just voter deception. But, it's sus all round, but you're never going to get anything ethical under a Liberal government, and as long as they're getting the Chinese money, they're not going to have anything to say about it.
Yeah, when those posters came out, that were designed to look like Australian electrical, electrical, you know.
Try saying that 3 times fast.
What you said. I actually lodged a complaint with whoever the fuck it was who you lodged a complaint to about electrical fraud, and they wrote back to me. It was cool. But they, of course, said, oh, it's legit. It was within the bounds of whatever. So, yeah, whatever. Anyway.
So now you know that was basically a result of the Chinese Communist Party trying to infiltrate Australian politics. The more you know.
Next question. Can you guys discuss a bit about Amber and the controversy with her statements on the African-American male arrested at a BART station for eating a sandwich? For context, BART's a public transport train system in California, and the police officer was originally there to apprehend some intoxicated individual, but couldn't find them, so he apparently targeted the guy instead. Also, people don't give a shit about eating on BART.
Yeah, I've watched that video. And yeah, it was a bad take to make, because she basically said something along the lines of, oh, well, if he had have respected the cop, then he wouldn't have been arrested. And I was just like, no, because obviously there are a lot of relationships between African Americans and the police force, which is why African Americans don't have respect for the police. And frankly, with the amount they get shot and then no repercussions as a result, I can't really blame them for that. So yeah, it was definitely an ignorant take to make. The only thing I feel vaguely sorry for her about is the clipping of that little video, because shortly afterwards, one of the other people who's on the program with her explains that to her, and then she's like, oh shit, I understand now. And I'm like, I'm sympathetic for you in the sense that you supposedly did learn after someone explained it to you, but I'm also a bit baffled in terms of we're the same age. So I don't understand how someone could be 27 and not really aware of African American and police relations in the US, particularly as someone who lives in the US. Like, I'm Australian and I know about it. Oh, and she's a K-pop idol, but she was living in America before she became a K-pop idol, and she's been back in America since. So it's a bit hard not to know.
It's one of the first things I ever found out about the US. Because when I was a teenager, you know, NWA, Fuck the Police was big, and Ice-T was big, and Cop Killer was a big thing. And, you know, so...
WA.
Yeah, so that and Public Enemy were talking about that sort of stuff as well. All the you know, back in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, rappers actually had something to say. It wasn't just all about money like it is now. So...
Thanks BTS for, you know, bringing back real meaning in rap music.
No. So, yeah, I was very well aware of all that stuff and the Black American point of view on it. I mean, obviously
not to butt into you as well, but, you know, Amber's meant to be a rapper of the group as well. Not that SM rappers really have that much credibility,
well,
but...
they don't write their own raps, so they're just they're talkers. They talk in time to the beat, what the man tells them to say. True that, you know, I got it.
Well played.
Yeah. So yeah, I was always aware of it, and I'm incredibly ignorant about all sorts of things in America, but I knew about that. And, you know, I mean, obviously I'm only getting it from the Black American side, so I don't know. But but I know it's been an issue for a long time, and I can certainly empathise with Black people who feel like they're being picked on, because, and I've seen it as well when I've seen, like, it's probably nowhere near the level in Australia, but I mean, I was in a mixed race band. We had Aboriginal members in the group. In Adelaide, we never have any problems, but when we toured up in Queensland, it was a different story. You know, we'd have to, when we check into hotels, like me and the other white guy who was our audio engineer, we'd go and do the hotel booking, and the black guys to stay in the car because they knew that if they went and did it, they'd get charged extra, or they'd ask to be paid a deposit, or they just would be refused. You know, you saw a lot of racism up in Queensland, and all sorts of weird things that just wouldn't happen to white people. Like saw black guys getting moved on from the food court because they were playing chess. It's like, if it's two white guys in suits, that'd never happen, you know. Things like that. So, you know, those things are real when they happen. And
like if you look at the statistics of the Australian population, I think Aboriginal Australians make up roughly 2%. But then if you look at the statistics of how much of them make up the jail ratios, it's insanely disproportionate. Like, I think in the Northern Territory, they make up 98% or something just baffling.
Yeah. And yeah, so those sort of things go on, and we're sort of pretty aware of it down here. I would think most people with any sort of consciousness would be aware, and Amber's always been that person who's sold herself as very conscious of these things. So, and I mean, look, I don't really give a fuck because I don't really expect anything from these people, you know. So it doesn't really change my opinion of any of her music. Or even really her as a person, honestly, because, you know, I didn't really have any stock invested in her as a person anyway. So it's just like, okay, so we said something stupid, well, whatever, you know, I would say stupid stuff every day. Who gives a shit? But So I just don't really care. But I understand why,
Yeah, I understand why that would be so upsetting to anyone, especially someone who is black in America.
Yeah, especially if you had a bit of a hard-on for Amber and she did that, you'd be a bit like, here we go again. Yep. So, next question, which may be related or may not be. Mm-hmm. Could an argument be made to classify Zimzalabim as a hate crime?
God, that song is a fucking mess. I had it weirdly stuck in my head today, but for whatever reason, it was like different variations of the word Zimzalabim. So instead of Zimzalabim, it would be like Zimbabwe. Or, what was it? The guy that Sheldon's Bazinga, Bing Bala Zing, Bing Bing Bala Zing. Like just different random gibberish.
It could be anything, couldn't it?
Yeah.
It's... Well, people listening who read my stuff will know my thoughts on that song, which that was one of the first reviews I wrote. I always start writing the best and worst list like a month or two in advance. Mm-hmm. Starting off with the stuff which I know is definitely going to get in the list no matter what. And I think it was one of the first things I wrote was a thing on Zimzalabim because I thought, well, there's no way this is not getting in.
Yeah, I need to read your worst of. I read your best of. I agree with A Pink but I think that needed to be higher.
Oh, tough.
That's on the best list, by the way, in case anyone's getting confused.
Yeah, I know you really like that song. And
Great
a lot of people did. It's a good song.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Let's move to the next question. Hey, just finished listening to your last podcast and really appreciate how much time and effort you put into this. They think we put in time and effort. Don't tell anyone. I've got two very different questions. Question one of the things I found very interesting about the last podcast was when AustralianSana mentioned how the idols who took their own lives were all more progressive leaning. To me, it seems like these celebrity suicides, as well as the issues K-pop has in general, slave contracts, beauty standards, expected work attitude, etc., almost put like a lens on the issues that Korean society as a whole has, showing a more extreme version of things that are already not going well.
Yes.
Viewed from that perspective, it would sadly make sense for idols who are seen as more progressive to receive more backlash from fans, as well as possibly from within the K-pop system for touching a sore spot.
Yes.
My question would be whether the K-pop industry as a whole could be seen as a more conservative or progressive force within Korean society. On the one hand, there are very outspokenly progressive artists, and certain brands of empowerment have been sold very successfully so far, such as 2NE1 and BTS. On the other hand, neither fans nor industry seem to be willing to, or at least capable of, protecting artists from getting under fire or even just lowering the outrageous demands idols are supposed to fulfill. Yeah. So what is K-pop as a whole leaning to?
That's an interesting question. So if you're after what K-pop as a whole is leaning to, if they're going to bring up BTS as an example, I think they're a huge example of the fact that idols can be progressive as individuals, but then will be restricted by the machine when they actually start speaking out and gaining any actual power. So it was fine for 2013 BTS to be anti-establishment, not to 2016 BTS when that was the last time they've really actually had any balls in terms of speaking out against corruption. So for those who don't know, 2016 BTS released a song called Am I Wrong? And that is interpreted as being very political. It was like, am I wrong about the whole world's gone corrupt, everything's gone crazy? If you read the lyrics, it's actually quite well written. And they performed that live on television, which I happen to be in the audience for, hashtag humble brag, Mnet Countdown. You can see me at the front. So they performed that song on Mnet Countdown right in the middle of when public backlash was really starting to mount against President Park Geun-hye at the time. And she was also running an active blacklist on anyone who dared criticize her regime. So that was the last time BTS was actually political. Whereas nowadays, because they've actually become such a huge group and has all this influence, they've been totally leashed and restrained and put under the government's thumb since, what's his name, Moon Jae-in has become the president since. So, they were very outspoken against the conservative, corrupt president, which, is why I really got into them, because fuck the establishment, especially conservative establishments. But, now we've got a centre-left president. Suddenly that's just all died in them. And I would say that Bang is majorly responsible for that because he seems to be really in cahoots with this president. Like, if you look at all the Bang Shi-hyuk shakes hand of Moon Jae-in articles that exist everywhere on Google. And if you look at, if you do a quick Google search of BTS and Moon Jae-in, you'll get like link after link after link after link of all the different events that they've spoken to, received congratulations from, shaken hands with, received gifts from. And it's like, okay, so you've basically been bribing them to shut the fuck up and support your administration. And of course armies buy into it because they're like, oh, look, the president likes them, the president supports them. I'm like, yeah, presidential support when you're meant to be anti-establishment isn't really cohesive. So I would say that the K-pop sphere is all about presenting this image of Korea to the world through Hallyu. So, of course, the government is going to try to play a major role in shaping what that image is. And Korean culture and society is still, I wouldn't say, I don't want to say regressive because that could come across as being quite racist, and that's not my intention at all. But in terms of society-wise, it is still quite a few years behind in terms of societal issues such as racism, sexism, misogyny, things like women's rights.
So regressive, in other words.
Yeah, I know. I'm being that kind of white person. But this is also what I'm hearing from Koreans themselves. Like, I volunteer at a church. I know, I'm surprised I don't get struck by lightning every time I try to walk through the doors, on a regular basis to help tutor English to people who don't speak English as a first language. Mm-hmm. So that's my way of trying to use my privilege to help other people. And there are a group of Korean ladies who I speak to at the church, and we have our morning tea together. And, like, the first time I met them, I was basically introduced by someone who's like, oh, this is Holly, and she's studying in Korea. And we had a chat that was very similar to this in terms of, you know, why did you move to Australia? What things do you notice are different? Why are you interested in Korea if you're an Australian? And I talked about, like, things like me studying over there, me witnessing politics firsthand over there because I was there in the middle of an impeachment scandal. And I asked them about their perspectives of Australia. And a lot of things in Australia are more progressive in terms of women's rights and in terms of children being able to enjoy their youth and go to school and then actually have time outside of school and not just be trapped in like a system that's all about grades and nothing else but your grades, otherwise you're worthless as a person. And yeah, I'm like trying, because I don't want to be too critical in terms of there are many wonderful things about Korea and I loved living there and I totally do want to visit again, but K-pop presents this very polished image of Korea as a country, and it doesn't really have much room for social criticisms in terms of like things such as those rights. Whereas Hara and Sully, especially as women, who were very much on the receiving end of a lot of that kind of bullying that were to do with misogyny in Korean culture, in terms of Sully with her no bra movement. Sully was very feminist in a country where feminism is still perceived as being a very dirty word. And I think that even in Western cultures, feminism still does have a bit of a, ooh, white feminism and, oh, you're a feminist, oh, you hate men. But in Korea, it's at another level, really. Like, Irene reads a book on feminism and she had people burning her photo card for it. Nun from A-Pink had like a caption on the back of her phone case that says girls can do anything, and she had all these hate comments on the back on her Instagram because she like took a selfie in a mirror or something, and then people realized girls can do anything. What are you trying to imply? Are you suggesting that men can't do things? Oh my god, she's a crazy liberal feminist. And yeah, the
girls
backlash
can do anything, why aren't they being drafted?
Yeah. That kind of thing. So it's like, yeah, it's if you are, I guess, interested in K-pop more than just that polished little sphere, you can tell, like, precisely Irene's situation, Nun's situation, that things are definitely not as progressive socially as they are in terms of technologically. Because some of the technology that comes out of Korea is some of the best in the world. But in terms of societal issues like women's rights, they've still got a long way to go. And obviously the West still has a long way to go as well too. You get the gist of what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think that any arts field generally tends to attract progressive people, just because if you have any sort of desire to do music or art, then you're generally a creative person, and creative people kind of exist by trying to do things that are new or trying to reinterpret things in a different way, which is very much the definition of progression, as in the more literal definition of moving forward, as opposed to conservatism, which is like trying to keep things the way they are. But as an industry, K-pop's certainly one of the most conservative that I've ever come across. Certainly, in terms of behaviour, in terms of people being quite willing to accept the status quo and basically play the game. There's not a lot of questioning that goes on, and I mean, if it was, people sometimes think that I'm conservative. I'm not sure why, but the fact is that if K-pop was more progressive, my blog would be much less controversial than it is, because people would be used to that idea of questioning authority and of questioning what they see, and of trying to look at things from a different way and being able to be satirical. All those things are aspects of progressivism, I think, or progressive thought. Not just taking everything so seriously and having a white suit and tie approach to art. So I think K-pop's very progressive, very conservative in that sense. And it's the sort of shoehorning of very progressively minded people into very conservative requirements, which I think creates a lot of the angst that a lot of the more progressive stars feel, and also probably a lot of the more progressive fans feel. And I'm not necessarily talking about a left wing versus right wing slinging match. I'm just talking about the way people think, and if that makes any sense. Now, this person had a second question as well. As Australians, have you watched the Al Jazeera documentary How to Sell a Massacre?
Yes, so that's all to do with Pauline Hanson and the One Nation Party, and then they went to America and were basically trying to receive donations from the NRA in order to loosen Australia's gun laws.
I haven't seen this documentary, but I'm very well aware of it, because it was when it came out, it was national news. If yes, what's your take on it, both content-wise and in terms of how the story was investigated?
Look, I think it's valid because, as someone who knows a bit about Australian politics and the One Nation Party, I think anyone would be able to tell you that the Conservatives in Australia do want relaxed gun laws, and that is something to be deeply embarrassed about, because our gun laws are what keeps us safe, whilst Americans are unfortunately still having to deal with basically that Onion article that comes out every time there's a mass shooting. Country that has regular mass shootings says there's nothing to be done to prevent mass shootings, says only country that has mass shootings. Why do we want to go in that direction? It's baffling, and it's insulting that they would willingly try to participate in doing that.
For those around the world without context, One Nation Australia is kind of
Tea Party.
Yeah, they're like, I guess they're a bit like Tea Party in the US, or like UKIP in Britain.
But they're like a redneck Tea Party.
And they generally, Pauline Hanson got a start in the Liberal Party, which Australia is conservative. And
that's a fuck up of the word liberal.
and she got kicked out of that party for being, too racist, basically, which is a
pretty big accomplishment when you consider how racist the Liberal Party is here.
Where the band I was touring up in, one of the bands that I toured with up in Brisbane, a punk band, they had a song called Fish and Chips Bitch from Ipswich. which actually was a big hit on the independent radio up there about the time that Pauline Hanson first emerged, and was very controversial before she got locked up. So, but anyway, so that's the context of that, and I mean, gun control in Australia has bipartisan support. But One Nation is so far on the fringe of Australian politics that they actually don't like gun control, and that's actually quite rare here. Which is good, I think.
Yes. Well, speaking of that, there's George Christensen, who I'm pretty sure is, like, he's in Queensland, not much of a surprise in that regard, but isn't he part of the Liberals, or is he part of the Nationals?
Oh, I don't even know. Same difference.
Yeah, but, like, there is a Australian politician who is not One Nation, but is, like, supposedly from the more centre-right, but he is very much in favour of relaxing gun laws, so it's to do, I guess that's an example of how Australia doesn't have a left and right like people tend to think we do. It's very much a centre-right and a hard-right party these days.
And it's interesting because the Conservatives are the ones who actually brought in the gun laws here.
Yeah.
And it's widely considered to be the best thing they ever did during that particular term. Moving on.
Yeah.
Please talk about how fans complaining so much about lines can make people dislike we're talking, I guess, about line distribution.
Yep.
Not cocaine. Please talk about how fans complaining. Please talk about how fans complaining so much about lines can make people dislike the idol that the fans keep asking lines for. For example, I like John Yong and Chae Yong from Twice, but every time I see them, I remember about the stupid fans that are always like, "Oh my God, Jaeyoung Yunny didn't get 1 minute worthy of lines in this song. JYP is so evil. She should get more lines than Nayeon and Jiho. This is so unfair to my baby."
Yeah, I guess like Twice is a huge example of that because they're a group with 9 members. So if you've only got a song that has 3 minutes, and then considering the fact that
someone's going to get fucked in the ass if you've got 9 members in a 3-minute song.
Especially given how much of a 3-minute song is like an instrumental as well. Yeah, you know, of course, as a fan of all 9 members of Twice, I would like to see more line distribution rather than just the same members getting the majority of each song. But then at the same time, it's like, that is the K-pop machine in terms of groups have positions, and you got your main vocalist and your lead vocalist, and certain songs have certain ranges, and I'm pretty sure Jonghyun has more of a lower range whilst Nayeon and Jihyo are higher, so that's why they get more of the lines, because a lot of Twice songs are very much in a higher pitch. So yeah, I can get why certain fans, I get both sides of the coin in the sense that, like, yeah, I get if you're a fan of an idol who is not getting very many lines, then you're going to be like, oi, I'm buying these CDs, and my favourite member is barely appearing in the CD, what gives? But it's like also, you know, at what point does it become insulting to the other members, and yada yada yada, I guess. Like, yeah, it's hard, I guess it's hard to draw an exact line on where it is to be rude and offensive to the other members of the group.
Well, I don't think it really matters much.
I think they're all getting paid, or not getting paid the same amount.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the ones who get the more singing are probably the ones who probably would rather sing more anyway most of the time. I mean, from the information that I've had from people who have actually debuted in K-pop or tried to, is that they'll deliberately specialise in. So if you're a dancer, they'll try and make you a better dancer. If you're a good singer, they'll try and make you a better singer, and they won't focus on the dancing and so on. So obviously, if you've got specialised people, and some people have singing more in their comfort zone, then it makes sense to give that to those people, you know, and the ones who would rather dance or they look good, you know, then that's what they do. So they might. I think
Taeyong is an example from like that person who talked about Twice. She's in an interesting situation because she's a decent rapper, especially by like girl groups or like JYP group standards, I guess, because they're not necessarily known as being rap-based. And girl groups don't have as much of a reputation as featuring rap in their music as what quite a few boys do. So when Chaeyoung has rapped, she's written the majority of her rap verses. And, you know, without sounding like I, you know, smoke up my ass, because frankly I'm not exactly the first person you'd really think of as a rap critic, but I think she has like a decent understanding of rap ability in terms of flow, in terms of lyrical skills, in terms of delivery. I wouldn't call her like, you know, the second coming of Jay-Z, but you know, I think she's got potential with what she does. So of course I would therefore like to see her have more lines, but you know, in a group concept like Twice, that might be a difficult way for her to get that. So then I guess other things come into it in terms of solo projects or mixtapes or be it solo albums or just like free songs that are put on SoundCloud. So I guess in terms of that, personally, I'm not as fussed about line distribution in songs as I am about an opportunity for the idols who want it to be able to have access to the creative freedom to do outside projects. I guess that's what I would advocate for.
One thing that I'll ask you about, this is something for me, is that after I spoke to you maybe last time or the time before or something like that, someone noticed that you're very interested in, you know, idols who write their own music or get the chance to write their own music. And they also noticed that I had a post from years ago talking about how when you think your idol writes their own music, often they don't write their own music.
Yeah, I have read that post.
Yes. So when you're making those sort of determinations, I guess how do you know?
Well, the short answer is I don't. But in terms of what I'm talking about in my little fantasy land where everything happens in a way that I approve of, I guess I like the idea of idols who have that interest just being allowed to go into the studio and have some form of creative control and creative direction. So obviously, like, this isn't a perfect example because I'm not in the studio with them, so I've got no idea what's going on. And anything that someone says is that, and that's approved by a company to be published, can never be taken at face value because it could obviously just be a fluff piece to make the company look good rather than what the idols are actually thinking. But something that vaguely matches this would be G-Friend. So G-Friend talked about one of their more recent albums, and they don't necessarily have writing credits per se, like I don't think they're listed in the production or the lyrical content, but they were said in an interview that they were involved in terms of the creative style and direction of the album. So like they had a say in the vibe that they wanted the songs to have, or the tone of what the song wanted to have, or the direction. So hypothetically, assuming everything in that statement is 100% true, I like that idea of just even being able to have input. And if that's the level that G-Friend wants to have, and then they get to have that, then I think that's a good thing. I think it potentially opens doors for them to continue and find out what part of the creative process that they gain the most enjoyment from being involved in. So I've always believed that idols can be artists, and it doesn't necessarily have to come in the form of music production, although that is obviously a valued skill, and I wouldn't talk down about anybody who's capable of doing that because I sure as hell am not. But to contrast that in the West, I would use Britney Spears as an example. Britney Spears has very minimal songwriting credits to her name, but she is widely regarded as one of the greatest pop performers of our modern era. And I personally, as a fan, consider her an artist from the way that she's able to bring her songs to life. Like, anybody can record a demo, anybody can go up on stage and sing a song, karaoke or what have you. But Britney as a whole package has been able to sell her songs, sell her music. And I guess, like, that's going off on a massive sidetrack in terms of the Free Britney campaign and what that's cost her in her personal life. And there's a lot of tragedy in regards to that. But in terms of speaking of artistry, I think that artistry can come from other aspects of music and the whole package. and idol music is much more of a package in terms of choreography, videography, photography, performance that doesn't just have to be from the song itself. So sometimes it can even just be picking the genre that you want to do. So if an idol wants to learn music production, happy to see them in a studio and learning. And even if it's only one line in a song that they start out with, and hopefully that leads to better things for them in the future, which I think is Shiny's Jonghyun would be an example of that, in terms of he originally has always wanted to write, but SM always told him that it's like, you have to be as good as any of the actual producers that we're hiring and bringing in from overseas or Kenzie for us to put you on a record. So he was rejected until eventually he became good enough that he started getting his names in credits. And you could argue that, maybe he only wrote the one line, just like Kpopalypse says sometimes idols do. But then by the time that he's writing music for other artists and self-composing his own entire albums, then you get to a point when you really do know that it's him putting in that effort by the end. Yeah. So it depends on the level of experience they have to start out with. So using BTS as another example, Yoongi was already a producer before he started working for Big Hit, so that puts him on a much better capability to have involvement in his music process.
Yeah, there are certain cases where it's more obvious that there is some sort of input going on.
Yeah.
And there's other ones where it's like, well, they probably just tacked the name on and maybe they got to choose the colour of the box.
Yeah.
There was another question which is very similar to the one I just asked, which was just about the point of roles in K-pop groups. We've sort of already covered it. Mm-hmm. But the one thing they did ask was is how that's changed in the last couple of years. Or how do you think it's changed? Or has it changed?
I mean, I think it's changed a little bit in the sense that it's not as labelled overtly as what it used to be. So if you look up a girl group or a guy group's profile, I know anytime I did that in, say, 2013, you would immediately get like official profiles, which would then say from JYP himself or SM, etc., visual, sub-vocalist, lead vocalist, etc. Whereas these days, I don't think it's as specifically labelled. Like, you might get it on a fan-made profile, but maybe not necessarily the official ones. Like, I know that Blackpink doesn't have a leader, whereas a lot of groups tend to have leaders. Blackpink doesn't. I don't think 21 had one either, actually. But, like, you'll always have your Magna. Majority of times you'll have the leader who's just the oldest member of the group. Although, in Twice's case, that's Jihyo. So, there's always exceptions to the rule. Yeah, I just think, for example, if you're talking about vocalists, if you use Woollim as an example, or Infinite, there were very much sub-vocalist, main vocalist, Woohyun and Songgyu were you two, like, one's the main and one's the lead. Whereas I think nowadays, if you got that kind of group position, they'd both be on equal terms. So, maybe, but, like, I wouldn't exactly call myself an expert on the topic either.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying rings true. It's not something I've ever really paid much attention to. I guess I'm really out of the loop with a lot of those sort of conversations. As soon as people start talking about who's who, I just fucking tune out on that shit. I don't really care. I only really care about if the song's good.
Yep.
Last question. This is the last one for this episode. And this is from the person who asked about the lines and how it made them annoyed when fans had crap on about it. Another topic I think would be cool of you to talk about is when fans get mad at an idol passing because it made the comeback of their bias group get delayed. AOA had a comeback this week and their showcase got delayed because of the Hara situation. I saw so many fans saying that Hara was selfish and that she made AOA's efforts go to waste.
Well, I think that's kind of a contributing factor as to why idols kill themselves. Because they basically feel like they're only a product. Like,
yeah, that right there just sort of shows you exactly, you know, what idols are up against when it comes to how people are perceiving them.
Like, if Hara's taken her own life, the fact that it's affected AOA's comeback is supposedly more of a tragedy than...
You got to wait 2 weeks.
please refrain from killing yourself until next comeback kind of thing. It's just, yeah, it's sad.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked up. Like a lot of things are fucked up. But
like a lot of things.
Yeah. But yeah, some fucked up shit. I mean, I didn't see any of those comments, but then I don't really have too many idiots on my feed, so.
Yeah, probably it helps that you've blocked pretty much a lot of armies as well.
Yeah, I blocked about 10,000 armies, and then the Twice fans got upset at me because I did that interview with that German stalker dude. So I blocked another few thousand of those idiots. And, you know, so, and...
Yeah, I mean, my block list is over 100,000, so can relate.
Yeah, it's getting to the point where one of my friends will post some random K-pop news thing, and half the comments will be, I can't read them because I've blocked them.
Yep.
and I'm like, oh, gee, what a shame.
Saved yourself some brain cells.
Yeah, but hey, if anyone wants to get unblocked, all they got to do is, you know, talk to a mutual and, you know, send me a PM and I'll unblock them. And hasn't happened yet, so so be it. Thank you once again for sharing your time and talking to me about stuff. Much appreciated.
Yeah, it's funny how, like, a few things that came up today were things that I'd vaguely been thinking of. For example, the bathroom question, and then also Zimzalabim being stuck in my head, and then funnily enough, just this whole segment that we do, because I was like, oh yeah, I hadn't done one of these in a while. I think I might have been thinking about that like 2 days ago or whatever, so that ended up all coming together.
Cool. That's good. Alright, well, I'll see you next time, and people can submit questions as usual. Please submit stuff, and, you know, if you're upset or happy or whatever about the feedback and the direction of the questions, then, well, you're in control, listeners, so just send us something and we'll tackle it.
I'm always happy to hear feedback so long as it's constructive. So when I do these things, I don't intentionally try to piss anyone off as much as some people may think otherwise. So if you do have criticism, by all means, feel free to inform.
I think most people who actually would sit through an hour and a half of us yabbing on would probably be reasonably mentally together and would probably give us reasonable feedback. I think. I mean, I've been really happy with the quality of questions, generally speaking. I mean, even the troll ones are at least funny.
Yeah.
So, all good. All right, no worries. Thank you very much for the chat, and we'll meet again for another podcast at a time to be determined.
Yes, and also, side note, thank you to whoever does the constant work of transcribing these little chats that we do, because they go for long times. I can't imagine the amount of effort that's actually involved in having to... Well, I can imagine, because I did do transcriptions of a couple of uni projects a few times, and I know there's a lot of work involved. So to be doing that for free without really... I know, so without being asked, but like it's just something that's happened for all of them so far. Super appreciative of the work that's involved in that.
I'm very appreciative, because I did the first 6 or 7 ones before this other person started, and fucking hell, it's a lot of work. And because you talk quick as well, and I probably talk a bit funny, so we're probably not the easiest people to transcribe. So, yeah, we do appreciate what you do. You know who you are.
I
don't. So... Thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, thank you.